Hi, good evening, and welcome to the June Hatfield School Committee meeting. I'm Christy Boudreau, Chair of the Hatfield School Committee, and tonight we have some fantastic guests we're excited about, and we're going, as I call this meeting to order, we're going to take things a little bit out of order, if that's okay with the committee. I would like to actually start with items 5 and 6, which are student presentations, and then followed by a student representative report if we have that. And then we will come back for public comment and mission moments. So first up, I believe we have student presentations to give us an update on the trip to Guatemala. Oh,
Is this on your screen?
yes.
I'd like to just introduce, we have Amelia Nez and Emma Moynihan.
She can share screen.
You have to share the screen on Zoom, and that will go.
And Christy and her child.
He's glorious, though. I mean, but it's not going to do much to talk about Guatemala.
Undisputed.
Share screen. There you go.
Wow.
Awesome.
So I'd like to just introduce.
Thank you.
Folks here. We have Emma Moynihan and Amelia Nez as our students, and Miss Angie Baranowski as our staff representative who took the trip and are here to present. So thanks for being here.
Welcome.
Okay, so yeah, we went to Guatemala. Do you mind just like swiping through the pictures?
Good.
Okay. You want to talk first?
So our work component or work project that we did this trip was building like a concrete play area for the kids, because it was the area that we were in, they used to just have dirt that was filled with rocks and stuff, and kids would breathe and inhale that, which wasn't necessarily healthy for them. Or like, well, I guess the kid broke his ankle because he rolled his ankle on a rock. And so by doing this work, we were helping them build a more safer area for them to do activities like outside classroom or just play in general.
We would work, I think we went to the work site 4 days out of the 9 days we were there. And we were there from like 8 in the morning to 12. And then we would go back and we'd eat lunch at the home base we were staying at. And we'd get some like a little bit of downtime during lunch to just like talk to our friends, which I thought was like really fun. And then we would do cultural activities. So we learned a lot of different things. Like we went to the chocolate making place, where we went to some woman's house who made chocolate for a living. And it was really like eye-opening to see like the different lifestyles that people have. And like, I think it shows a lot of the kids that go on the trips, like how lucky we are to have what we do have at home. Because there was another woman we went to who made pottery, and her house was made out of like
Mud, like dried mud and
trash.
Yeah.
Like those were her walls. Like she formed them out of mud and trash. And I don't know. I just personally thought it was really eye-opening and really good to see.
Yeah, it like kind of the whole trip kind of really showed you how grateful like you are as a person for what you have in life, because there's lots of people that don't necessarily have the same amenities that we do, that we take for granted. And we didn't just work, but we also like went on different excursions to Lake Atitlan, which was like a little touristic city, in Antigua, which was also another city. So it was a great opportunity to kind of explore the world and see the world, but also like get immersed into different culture, which was like what I really enjoyed. I also enjoyed that we went with Hopkins, because although there wasn't many Hopkins kids, it was nice to like bond with different people, because before that, like I wasn't as close with some of them, and you kind of, after spending like a week together and like working together, you really connect with one another. And even the staff was like, yeah, we wouldn't have known who wasn't friends here or who was from a different school, because we all really got together, which was like one part that I really liked.
Yeah. I also liked that we connected with the staff. So because we are in Spanish, we tried our best to speak Spanish with the staff. And it was a little rocky, I won't lie, but it was really like interesting to like see like our abilities and like, I don't know, see what we learned and like actually apply them in the real world. So I thought that was really cool. We really bonded with the staff. I went to Panama and Guatemala, and both times we really bonded with the staff.
Also bonding with the kids there as well. Like the staff said every time a group comes, the kids love having you. Like, and I felt that with our group, we really spent we devised our time between working and spending times with the kids and like building bonds with them. And although they spoke a different native language as well in Guatemala, that was like a Mayan language, Cachiquel, yeah. But even with that, although there was like a different language barrier other than Spanish, it didn't matter. Like you played with the kids, you like got to know them, and it was like a great experience to, I don't know, like learn about people and connect with them.
Yeah, they were also super sad when we left.
Yeah,
They
there
were
was
like
a couple
crying.
kids that were crying. Yeah,
And they put on this whole ceremony for us as like a goodbye, and they were like dancing. And
Do you want to talk about teaching the kids?
Oh, we
the
also
Charlos.
Yeah, we do this. It was like a learning aspect. So we made posters and basically a presentation for each of the classes there. There was like a young elementary, older elementary, and like a middle school classroom. And we called them Charlos, and they were basically on like personal hygiene, COVID prevention, like hand washing. And we did like activities with them and like presented them in Spanish, obviously, to the kids. And the kids always loved it because they were active with it. We made it engaging with them, as like not just giving them a presentation about something and having them sit there, but my group was hand washing, and we like did a little activity with glitter where we put glitter on the kids' hands, and we were like teaching them how to wash all the glitter off, and like they really loved that. And after we gave them stickers, which they loved even more. But it was like a great experience with that because we got to like show what we know with our Spanish, but also like give them something in return because they hang these posters in their classrooms.
Do you guys have any questions?
Committee?
I do. Did you guys roast? What did you guys roast? Are they
that was
coffee beans or cocoa?
It was
Yeah, cocoa.
Yeah, cocoa beans. It was the chocolate. That's the house we went to, and you would roast the cocoa beans and then peel them all by hand and put them in a blender with sugar, and you would grind them up and then add water, and it made like hot chocolate.
Yeah.
And you brought samples home?
Yeah.
I'm not seeing any samples, so I'm not going to hold that against you.
Next time.
However, yeah, next time. So what would you say to your classmates who might consider a trip like this in a year or 2 or 3? What would your advice be to other students?
I'd say definitely go. It was such a fun time to like spend, and it was so memorable because like when are you ever going to be like, all right, I'm going to Guatemala? Like realistically, it's just like such a fun experience because you're with your friends. You're meeting new people, you're connecting with new people.
You learn so much.
Yeah.
Like things that you can't really learn in the classroom. Like it's just a different experience.
And just like the quetzales and the changing money.
Yeah. I would never know what a quetzales was unless I went to Guatemala.
Yeah.
Like, it's just really cool in my opinion.
How was the food?
Oh,
It was good.
amazing. Amazing. All the time. We had the kitchen staff there was so great, and like each meal we had some sort of little like dessert, but it was usually like a fruit, and the fruit was so fresh because you're down obviously where everybody's farming, and so it was just everything we ate was like delicious. I think I cleaned my plate every
me too.
single time.
Yeah.
But
And they made fresh tortillas every single meal. It was so good.
it was really good.
Did anybody learn how to cook anything while you were?
The kitchen staff told Senora how to cook the pupusas, which were these tortillas stuffed with cheese, and they were really good. We had those for breakfast one morning.
We didn't have any other cooking class there, did we?
No, other than
Well, we did tamales, but. just the
Yeah.
hot
Yeah,
chocolate.
just a hot chocolate.
I appreciate you guys coming in. It's always nice to hear about how your trips went, what you learned. Anything else before we move on?
No, thank you for coming.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
thanks for having us.
And now we get to hear from the band. We should have known that was the band.
Of course, it was the band.
The corn and guitar.
Guitar.
treat. Like, we should
I love
know.
it.
Is there a presentation for the
So,
band?
yep.
We're fixing the slides over.
So you can click on the share this tab and stick it right there. That's the one. Sharing? Share it up
Yeah,
there?
we can see it.
Okay, great.
And John, do you have that? Awesome. Okay. Dr. Driscoll, did you want to?
Absolutely. So we're lucky we, on another long distance trip we had this year, we had several of them. And we have Ian Gazowski and Jack Brady here to present to us about the band trip that went to Philly. What was it, about a month and a half ago now?
It was at the end of April.
End of April. Great. So welcome. Thanks for being here tonight.
The floor is yours.
All right. So this year, the Smith Academy Band took a trip to Philadelphia for the World Strides Heritage Festival, which is a festival that the program puts together where they take a bunch of bands from around the area and bring them to a city and have a competition. And so we got to do that this year.
This is a picture of us on the bus. We got up really early. I think the bus left at 6 in the morning.
Yep.
And it was a long bus ride all the way to Philly. And I think we took one stop at a rest stop, and that was it.
Yep. So the first day, we took a constitutional walking tour of Philadelphia, which was very interesting. We got to see like Independence Hall, the Liberty Bell, where George Washington stayed when he was in Philadelphia, and like where the first American flag was most likely made. And it was very interesting to see because in Massachusetts, a lot of the time you hear like Boston was the big Revolutionary War city and colonial era city, but Philadelphia really has a ton of history from that time as well. So it was very interesting to see.
Those are just more pictures from the walking tour. So we also went on a ghost tour, the most haunted city in America, apparently. We learned about a lot of ghost stories. The guy giving the tour was extremely enthusiastic. He was awesome. And it was probably at least 2 hours long, and it went from like dusk to after the sun went down and got pretty spooky, and it was fun to learn about.
And then we stayed in a very nice hotel for 3 of the nights. And so then the next day, we went to the Franklin Institute, which was a huge science museum that Ben Franklin had created. And there were a ton of really interesting exhibits. Yeah, that's the word. There was one where you could, like, there was a huge model of the human heart that you could like travel up through and see all the different chambers of the heart. There was a maze full of optical illusions, so you could see all those. They were very interesting to look at. And I remember there was a cool exhibit where you could see a lot of like the smaller contraptions within everyday items that work, like gears shifting and like all those lever systems that work in like clocks or like bicycles or things like that, which I thought was interesting to see. And then later that day, we had our sort of guided practice for the concert the next day. I forget what the woman's name was, but it should be on one of those slides. But she was extremely helpful with us because we were a very small group coming in, a lot of younger kids as well, like super small band compared to a lot of the other ones that she was probably working with. And you could see she was a little bit out of her element, but she was super patient with us, super helpful, gave us a lot of great tips for the next day. And that was a great time.
And if you go back to the last slide, we went to the Reading Terminal Market, which was a really like crazy experience, like just a bunch of restaurants and, you know, food stands all in one packed place. There was so many people. And so we went there for souvenirs. Sadly, nobody was really hungry because we ate lunch right before we went there. So not a lot of food was purchased, but it was still really cool to see. Like there was some pretty exotic stuff,
Yeah.
like food with names you haven't heard of, and a lot of like really cool like wooden earrings and like African culture stands. Like it was super, super neat.
So then the next day, we started off by going to the Constitutional Convention Center, which is basically a center where it's like a huge museum. So the first thing we saw there was we saw this sort of show. It was like this round like dome theater looking thing. It was kind of strange, but it was really cool. We got to see how the Constitution was created and sort of like leading up to modern history, how it's affected that. And then we got some time to explore the rest of the museum. There were a bunch of exhibits about like the civil rights movement, like the women's suffrage movement, World War II, World War I, basically all of American history. There was a room where there were a bunch of statues of like historical figures. So that was really cool to look at. And yeah.
At the performance, it wasn't very long. We just played our couple of songs that we had, and we just went to the performance room with the high school band and the middle school band. Middle school went first, and then afterwards the high school band. And it was like there wasn't really like an audience. It was just the judges. And like I expected it to kind of be like all the schools would be there and like play at once, but it was really just like a one at a time thing. But then when we got to see all the other schools at the banquet later, which is on the next slide, like it was this really fancy like crystal chandelier like ballroom that had over 60 tables full of high school and middle school students, and that's where they served really good food, and they announced the awards, and they played music and everything, and it was pretty cool to see like that many people in one spot, and they're all like, you realize that they all competed in the same like competition or festival as you, and like you all went through similar stuff, and you're kind of wondering like, I wonder what they played to get such a good medal or something like that. Like it was really cool to see the other schools that were on the trips, and also to hear where they were from. Like some people came further than we did. Like there was at least one school that was from Canada, I think.
Yep.
And we were all just there in Philadelphia. So
Also earlier that day, we went to the Ben Franklin Museum, which was right by the Liberty Bell. And it's sort of it's like the whole museum's underground pretty much. And it's just all dedicated to Ben Franklin. So like from his early life all the way up until when he died, they had a bunch of like the contraptions that he made and like things that he engineered for the first time. And there was just a lot of fun, like hands-on exhibits there as well. So that was fun. Then we left early the next morning, had a long bus ride home, and made it back. So
Questions? Thoughts?
Okay, so what do you guys play?
I play bari sax and
I play tenor sax. So
Awesome. I just was thinking about it the whole time. I was like, oh, I'm just wondering.
yeah,
How
both
many
in the low
how many
range
people in the
section.
band right now? Do you know roughly?
It's pretty small for the high school band.
probably about 20 maybe,
Yeah.
between 20 and 30.
And not everybody went on the trip either. Like
Yeah.
we were missing a lot of our percussionists
Yeah, and clarinets
and,
as well.
and clarinets, which are pretty much the two biggest like groups of instruments in the band, like with how many people are in them, but like only a couple percussionists and one clarinetist, I think, came. And we had our bass clarinet, so didn't miss out on that.
Do you think based on your experience this year, you'll be able to recruit more people to go in the future?
I think there's a good
I
chance.
hope
mean,
so.
We have a lot of people coming up as well. So
Yeah.
Are there other local competitions? I would imagine there are district competitions for band. that are
Last year
local?
we had the Great East Festival, and so we competed in that in like the morning, and then afterwards we went to Six Flags, and that's like a more like typical like annual band trip that we do like that. We've done that one plenty of times before, so
Yeah, we usually take that trip, like the Great East Festival trip, and go to Six Flags like most years, and then every couple of years we'll do a big trip like this to
yeah.
mix things up a little bit.
Administration, any?
No. Thank you for being here. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Suzanne.
I love to hear it.
I wonder if we
Nice
shouldn't
job.
send a history teacher with them the next time we go. Sounds like you guys did as well as the trip to DC.
I will just say
Right.
for both of these trips, we received feedback from the organizations they went with and the folks that were with them about how well they represented themselves and represented Smith Academy. So way to go, and nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other group presentation tonight that I'm not aware of? Checking. Is there a student representative report tonight?
We do not have the student representative.
Not yet tonight. Okay. So with that, we're going to bounce back to public comment. So if anyone, this is a good time. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Okay. So if we can take this presentation off from screen sharing.
Nice job.
Good luck on your Spanish finals. There we go.
Did we want
No
to take,
more sharing. There we go.
did we want to take 7 out of order?
We can, but I was just making sure there wasn't anything
Okay.
waiting for public
Yeah.
comment. So I don't see anyone here for public comment. Okay, so with that, let's then move to number 7. This will be all kinds of out of order tonight. And talk about a trip to Panama for 2024. Welcome.
Thank you. So this trip that we just did was really Hopkins' trip that we jumped on, and we ended up sort of taking over. There were a lot more of us than there were of kids from Hopkins, but we only offered it to juniors and seniors because we wanted to preserve our trip every other year. And so that would be next year. And I was considering trying to do one to Honduras, but after getting proposals for both trips, I thought Panama seemed like the better choice for our kids. And I've been working with Global Brigade Squads Abroad. That's the same company we did the Costa Rica trip, the Panama trip, and the Guatemala trip with, to get a proposal for next spring. And I sent it to Mr. Wood, so he has it there to share with you. It has the basic details of it. And it's a very similar trip. It's a service trip, 4 or 5 days on the community service, and then a couple days of more sightseeing type things at the end. This trip, there are a few kids who, like Amelia, who went to Panama, who would want to go again. We do have different choices of cultural activities and field trips. So even though the home base would be the same, the work site would be different, the work would be different, the cultural experiences would be different. And the field trips would be different. So they could still have, there's 3 kids who went to Panama before who will be seniors next year. So we can still make it different for them. You already are pretty familiar with the type of trip it is, but I wanted to get your approval for another trip. I would like to do it to know before the kids go on summer vacation, to give kids time to make payments it's pretty, when we don't decide until October or November, they don't have a lot of time to make payments for it. And also I was hoping to do maybe one more fundraiser. The scones that we do is quite a strenuous job. We made almost 1,000 scones last time. It was all day. It was so much work. But it made them enough money to take several $100s off their trip. So it was good. I'd like to try to do something else if they want to. And we do have two things that are different about it. And one are the dates. And one is that we would also like to invite Hopkins again, since this worked so well. But we do need to Mr. Driscoll's, when I approached him about it, said, yes, but first we have to make sure there's enough room for all of the kids who want to go from Smith. And then if there's extra room, invite the kids from Hopkins, but we don't want to not have our kids have enough. And I think that would be their same attitude. Like, it will be Hopkins trip the next year. And if they want to invite some of our kids, if there's room, that's fine. But
Angie, did you say the cost? I didn't hear it.
it's on there. It's
Like
maybe
$27.
$2,800, something like that. I know it seems like a lot of money, but I mean, it's a
$800.
nonprofit company, and really it's less money than any of the like EF tours or anything like that. Because it's all 3 meals, and it's all transportation and all field trips and the airfare and
It's with Hopkins again.
what's that?
It's with Hopkins again.
Well, that's what again, we would, whatever. I asked Eric Werner, he's the president of the company, what the maximum amount of people would be that we could have. So we would get that number from him and then do a sign up for our kids. And if there were spots left over, reach out to Hopkins.
Is it cheaper when we have a fuller?
No, it doesn't change depending on how many kids there are. No, it's a cost set.
Would it be all grades? I'm sorry, I was trying to read something.
It's funny. We've always traditionally done 10 through 12. It started out because Jeff Pluto was the first one who did the trips with Amped for Education to Nicaragua, and he didn't allow kids under 15 to go. And so we set it at 10th grade, and I've always just kept that but Ruth Ann from Hopkins did let 9th graders go. But I don't know, I'm just comfortable with the older kids. I feel like they make better choices and they're more comfortable being away from home. And it's worked really well with us having 10th and
If
11th.
we're doing the trips often enough, it's not like we're excluding anybody. They'll have another opportunity to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
So I would support your decision on that.
Can we just double check? I don't see the price on the thing, and I didn't print that out.
It's
so-
$2,800. It's on the bottom of the
28.
second page.
Okay. Do you remember offhand what the price was when we went with Hopkins?
I think it was $26.70 or
So darn close.
it's always going to go up a little bit. I know it seems like a lot of money for a school trip, but if you think of traveling internationally for a good week, it's
that's ridiculously cheap for what it is.
Yeah.
It's not an insignificant amount of money.
Right.
Is this for next year?
Yeah, it would be next April.
There's a typo and it
Does it
says
say
that the
20?
deposit is 2025.
Oh,
So-
yeah, that's a typo.
Can't make mine bigger. I don't know why. What are the dates?
So
April 2nd through 9th.
So not during vacation.
So it's not, and I'm going to let Mr. Driscoll talk about this.
Yeah, we did that intentionally. When we went during the vacation, we found there were a lot of conflicts with spring sports. So some students felt like they had to choose between playing a spring sport or going on an international trip with Smith Academy. We didn't want them to have to make that choice. The way it's now, it's scheduled now, is it's still during a sports season, but it's earlier in the season, so there are fewer game conflicts. It's mostly during practice time. We actually wanted to go a little bit earlier, but that would have been during the Holy Week, which was a non-starter. They just don't do trips during that week because it's a week off.
And yeah, it's like tons of traffic and celebrations all over the place down there. They don't want a group down there. And the kids there aren't in school for us because we want to interact with the kids in school when we go. And then earlier in March would be all the college trips are going and because of spring break. So we don't want to be with a college group either.
I'm just curious, what is your prediction for how many kids from Smith Academy would want to attend?
That's a good question. I think a lot. I think this year's was definitely the smallest because we only opened it up to the 11th and 12th, and we have had more trips. I have had a lot of 9th and 10th grade this year's 9th and 10th grade say they weren't interested in the trip. But it's really hard to predict because sometimes kids will say, oh yeah, I'm going to go, and then they don't sign up. And opposite, sometimes you have kids come out of nowhere. So I'm guessing we'll have 20.
And I think, since we've started running these trips again over the past couple of years, the popularity has increased too. We had a small group this year, but it also wasn't our trip, and we limited the number of students. I think, I think part of that is the work that Ms. Baranowski has been doing is by generating interest and support for these trips. So, yeah.
So I have a question for you.
Mhm.
When you have 20 students missing for a week of school,
Mhm.
what does that look like at school? And what is that doing to classes that they're not in, where their classmates are still in math and science and English? And what does that look like
Yeah, that's a good
for
question.
their
And-
academics and their classmates?
And it looks different depending on the class that they're in. So if you have one student who's on the trip that's out from a class, they're probably going to function pretty similarly. If you have 50% of the class that's out, it may be that they do a related project that they're able to kind of do an extension work on something that they've been working on. You might introduce fewer new concepts during that time. And it might be that they send some of the work with students to do on the plane or to do in the evenings, where there's not new concepts, but again to keep them fresh with it. It's not uncommon for these trips to run during the school year like this, or to have it if it's like an exchange, have it over a vacation and another week in addition to it. So I know it's not a direct answer, but we would have to see who the students were first, what the classes were, and then make that call.
And by setting it now, do we set faculty up for being able to plan ahead
Absolutely.
enough that they can
Yeah.
build that into their lessons because they kind of know who's going to be out? I mean,
Kids can't join the trip late. Like once the plane tickets are bought, it's a set group.
how early does that get set?
Well, the deadline on there is, I think it's in the fall, but I almost wanted to do it this spring, and I don't know. I haven't got that far yet, but like I said, I wanted to do it before we left for summer so that families could make payments. That was my thinking.
In terms of planning, a month or a month and a half is plenty of lead time to be able to kind of figure out where they're going to be, and what needs to change. If you try to plan, right now for where they're going to be next April, it's going to, they're,
No one's ready.
yeah,
I'm not
exactly.
suggesting that, but I'm just,
So there'll be plenty of lead time for teachers to adjust where they need to.
Is there talk of having the musical return next year, or you don't know what we're thinking? I'm just wondering about if we're pulling 20 high schoolers from our population, what that would do potentially to the musical to succeed.
There is talk, and there's a lot of talk about having it return next year, and I think it will. And again, this would be something that, if this is set now, they can, when they think about the dates for the musical and dates for rehearsals, they can plan around it. It's probably easier to have this planned first, and then when we have whoever's going to be directing that play and directing the rehearsal, say, okay, this is a set conflict. Like, you have to work around this set conflict because this is when they're going to be
it's
going.
easier than the sports schedule because it's our own thing.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about 20 kids being out of school, that's actually school for everybody, I just want to, that may be an insignificant number for some districts, but that's, if it's just 10th through 12th, before we're looking at school choice additions, that's somewhere between a third to a quarter, depending on how many school choice kids we get. So a third of the school being out is that's why I'm just, it's a lot of, I love the opportunity, and I trust that the kids that go make up the work. It's just that their absence has a ripple effect into the rest of the school. That's the reason that's really my only concern, I guess.
My concern was about, you said that you didn't want them to choose between
Right.
sports and a trip, and I wouldn't
Or
want
the
them to
musical and
choose
trip,
between
yeah.
the musical and a trip. I'd like them to be having opportunity to do both.
Absolutely.
I mean, it would be worse if we had it during April vacation. That's like the week of the
That's
musical.
the
Performance,
Yeah.
right?
When it happens.
Right.
Maybe
We used
But
to
the
do the
week
trip in
before is going to be
We
an
used to
issue
do the
too.
trip in February, but then it was during tournament and
Right.
Allison had no control over scheduling games. And we had one year, like when we went to Costa Rica, we had to book hotels on the way home because there was a snowstorm and it ended up not being as bad. We got to cancel all the hotel, but we were going to have to stay in a hotel in Miami overnight because our flight was, so it's like the worry of the snow and the storms. So it's like trying to find a time that's
I know.
That's what I was originally thinking, March between basketball. But then when I talked to Global Brigades and they said how many college groups they have, I don't want to share the home base, the kids sharing the home base with college kids. I don't think that's a good idea.
I don't think our thoughts are the only thoughts though. So let's.
Well, just because we are talking about like a large number of our students, being out of school, can maybe you or the administration, could someone just like really high level, just for me, like your ultimate student goals for this trip and like how that's aligning with our DIP or with what we're doing, since we're talking about so many
Learning
students.
goals of the trip.
Yep. Like overall, like, is it
Okay, so
for Spanish?
for me, it's an immersion trip. Ruth Ann and I started speaking Spanish. We realized the kids weren't speaking enough on day like 2, and we just went completely in Spanish the whole rest of the trip. And we had to talk to the squads of red staff and say more Spanish, and they did. They complied, and so for me as a language teacher, that was the most important thing. But they also, we went to Mayan ruins. The kids talked about the chocolate class, but they also went to a shop where they made clothing, and it was going to like a small business run by a family with like 3 people, and they used the machines a little. They went to this pottery place. We went to a textile factory, tons of just culture in that way. And then also the educational part of the Guatemalan school system and how they worked with the kids. They had to learn vocabulary and present these lessons in Spanish to the kids. Before the trip, I worked with them on, I made a huge Quizlet set with tons of slang words, types of words they use in Guatemala that we might not have done in the classroom, to make sure they knew a lot of that type of words. They learned how to make scones. They learned how to bake. They learned how to mix concrete. There's so much that they learn. It's really hard to, I'm always like Spanish as the Spanish teacher, but
yeah,
they do learn, but it's it's a really broad experience. Even the money is Quetzal, and how do you change it and where do you change it? And you have to pay a fee to change it. And now we went to the local grocery store, and what products do they have and how much would they cost here? It's constantly. And with the kids, I do a ton of music with them before we go, Spanish songs, and they had Spanish playlists on the bus. So, and even when we took attendance, we counted, everybody got a number in Spanish. We didn't call names. Somebody would say uno and then dos, tres. And by the end, the bus driver was number 16, number 16, because our kids included him as part of our group, the bus driver. So it was a lot of learning.
And a couple of things to add to that in terms of the district improvement plan. The goal one is reach for excellence. If you look at the students we've had who've scored and achieved the seal of biliteracy, a lot of those kids have gone on these trips. They've come back stronger, speaking stronger, and able to reach that level of achievement. And in terms of, there's a piece that I think is really important, and I think the students that were here spoke to it. Hatfield it's an amazing town. It's not terribly diverse. And so to have this experience where you have students that are able to travel abroad and see what life is like in other places. Granted, it's for a short amount of time with a group of our students, but they do get to see and have that experience. And maybe those students will be inspired to continue a life of volunteerism and to continue outreach like that. At the very least, they bring that experience back to Hatfield. And I think that makes our school stronger. I think it makes the community stronger to have people with, experience elsewhere coming back and bringing that.
Amelia's older sister went on one of the trips to Nicaragua with me, and she's like, her career is now like really related. She did more and more service trips, and she works with like prison, like gang reentry into society and that same. And she said it was like directly affected by the trips that she took, the trip she took with us. So it really can. I mean, not every kid is gonna, some kids are just gonna be, that was a great trip to Guatemala, but for some kids it does change their life.
I mean, I like, just speaking on a personal level, obviously I'm a huge fan of, travel and things like this in general. Like I personally have also lived overseas more than one time. It was really impactful for me. I just like to kind of like hear directly, like what is our ultimate goal and what are we going for? Another question that I have about that, and I really appreciate what you said, like about the specifics on how you prepare the students for the trip with like, the specifics to Guatemala and, the language, things like that. I have also worked with similar nonprofits before, and they do come with different pros and cons. And so I'm wondering what specifically you and the Hopkins, however this works, like what specifically you're doing with the students to like help them develop their like cultural humility in advance of the trip. Like in my personal experience, sometimes like these types of nonprofits can sort of promote like a savior attitude, if you know what I mean,
Yes.
among some participants. So it's like important to me to know how we're addressing that.
Yeah. So, well, an example, they really talk about that we're not there to just swoop in, that we, the company has close ties with the communities, and they find out the exact needs of the community. And it's not just like, we're going to come in and do this. We find out exactly what they want. And then people from the community are hired to come help teach the kids. And like when we went to those workshops, they specifically would ask, so they weren't like paid to give us the workshops.
Mm-hmm.
We would make a donation to them. And so we would find out like, what do you want? Like the woman who did the chocolate making, she asked for like sacks of the cacao beans. And then the kids were asked to go out to the bus and to bring them into her. But somebody else, the woman who did the clay, didn't need clay because she could just get it from the ground. So she asked for food. And so it was like specific to the people's needs, that it wasn't just, I know what you're saying, like we're just going to come in and save the day, but I didn't feel like it was like that. Before the trip, we did have like a final expectations meeting, and there were some other types of cultural things, like don't just take pictures of people, like maybe on the last day, if you want to ask to take pictures, then that's fine, but you need to ask. And if you bring a gift, you can't just give a gift to a kid because that kid's now going to be the favorite. And you need to speak to the principal of school and ask if you can give a gift to the school, and then they can divide it up as they want. Like things like that, we did talk a lot to the kids about.
Okay, so you feel like satisfied that this organization is working directly like with local opinion? I mean, I did go on their website. I looked all over it. Like, I mean, the board of directors is totally based in the United States. So I was just wondering about like kind of like the local Panamanian involvement. Seems to be robust.
Yeah,
I guess.
no, it's amazing. And like when I first wanted to do a trip to Honduras, I was really worried because of the travel warning there and the reputation. But they just developed such ties that I asked them about it, because I thought I was going to be coming. And one of the reasons I didn't is there weren't any of the extra field trips. It was just working and just the cultural things. And I was like, these kids need a little fun, activities also. But I had some specific conversations about like, how can you guarantee it's safe? And they were like, you'll be safer there than you would be at home. We never, like, the communities are so grateful for we have such strong ties with them that it wouldn't behoove them to have, if anybody got hurt and weren't able to come here anymore, like they're so grateful. And we specifically know the community leaders, and we would never bring anybody to where the people would protect you here. And they would never go to any dangerous, they would just avoid any dangerous area. But that's how they described it in Guatemala too. I mean, we drove through the mountains on these dirt roads like an hour and a half to get to these villages because they sought out specific villages. And like the further the village is away from a city was the less support they got from the government and the more they needed.
Got it. So they're not like really based in like, hi, we're in Panama and we're based in this one school and da-da-da. It's always like a
Always
different
different.
place.
Yeah.
So like the students there are like occasionally having a cultural exchange with American students, not like rotating.
Yeah, like the
past
place
every single week,
This
week
week's
after
group of
week.
American
with
No,
another group.
the place we went to, we were the third group because it was a huge court. And the girls didn't really describe it, but it was like for
The
basketball.
pictures looked gigantic.
Yeah, so
I was like, they did that?
we did the final phase. We did a third of that because it was just too much work for us for one, especially we didn't have a huge group. The kids really worked really, really hard. And apparently there was a school before us that the kids were forced to go on the trip. It was from Manhattan. And they were the bad group that didn't want to work and complained about everything and weren't fun. They were like, you guys are so great. We love you.
Amazing. Okay, I'm sorry. I know I have like a lot of questions, just like I said, just based on my own experiences. I know there can just be pros and cons, when you're doing like a volunteerism. But it does sound like, overall, I mean, obviously, I think our students are definitely demonstrating that they're bringing back a lot. And, I just hope that if we do continue to do this kind of trip, that we really are able to like work with companies and also like help our students so that they have an attitude of like also learning from the people that they're with. You know what I mean? Rather than just being like, hey, we're here and we helped the poor children, like really learning from them and learning from the schools there and, from their cultural experiences, if that makes sense. It's like very important to me. And I feel like I just took up a lot of time. Sorry, guys.
It's okay.
I don't
It's
know if
worth
anybody
having
else
the
had questions,
conversation.
but I really wanted to be able to talk about it.
I feel really confident in this company.
Yeah.
When Jeff stopped doing the trips, I started seeking out a company that was close to his model. And I don't know, I think that they do great work and that they have a really good balance of safety and learning and helping the communities. And I'm very satisfied with them. And I feel like the work is meaningful and it's always in different communities. And I don't know.
Right. No, it's very helpful because like I said, I spent quite a bit of time actually on their website and I was not like totally clear. So it is helpful to hear, directly from you since you've been, working with them in the past, which I think is really good. Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Other issues,
Should I
questions?
take over
No, I
things?
appreciate your questions.
Okay.
I do as well.
My only other question, this comes up every time we do a trip, but I just like to have reassurance that we're also assisting any of our students who want to go, who cannot afford $2,700. Because we're already doing fundraising and stuff like that, but the school is working with students, I would assume?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Because this sounds really valuable, so I'd also like it to be equitable. So, okay, thanks.
So for us to move forward with this, we need to have a vote to to go ahead and pursue this and open it up. Do I have a motion?
I will make a motion to accept the trip to Panama in 2024.
I'll second.
Is there any further conversation from the committee?
I appreciate you guys.
No, I think volunteer tourism is a thing to be aware of. And I'm glad you are aware and continuing to make sure that we're on the better side of the situation as much as we can be.
Yeah. And I know like Ruth Ann did a trip to Costa Rica with, I don't know, I think it might have been Expedia. No, not Expedia. That's not.
Another group.
Another group, not EF, but the second big one, not World Strides. And she said it was just like it was mostly tourism. And then it was like, well, let's stop at this park and clean up some trash. And she said it was nothing like the experience at
And it sounds really immersive, like in a positive way.
And can I just add one thing too, because I know we started with the dates, we're circle back, but I just wanted to say too, because I think it's important to clarify that this, we're not talking about taking a week off of school. We're talking about having school for this week be an immersion experience for this group of students. That is linguistic, it's cultural, it's international, and it's, that we're not sending them on a vacation. Though there is a lot of fun that happens.
There's fun that
We're
happens.
sending them on a trip from school. That's a field trip, and we're doing so because we feel that there's value in that experience that they wouldn't get in the walls of Smith Academy. And any chance we can broaden our horizons like that, I think is a good one to do.
Opportunity.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I just have one more thing to add. I just want to say thank you to Angie because she's been doing this a while because I went to Spain with Angie in I think 99. And I'm looking at the year on my computer right now, and you've been doing this for a long time. So I know the students are in
Well, I
good
took
hands.
a lot of years off when I had my own
and,
children when they were little, but that was a different sort of trip.
And so I just wanted to say thank you for continuing to do it.
You're welcome. Thank you for saying that.
It's-
Appreciate that.
It's a great program, and I do think it does do a lot with looking at the number of students that graduated with their bilingual.
All three of them went to Panama.
So I'm very supportive of that, and I'm glad to hear, and I will look forward to hearing more about how we're making sure that week of school, if you were not off on an immersive experience, is
A week off.
that can't be a week off because it's like, oh, we're not teaching this week because half the class is in. So I know I wouldn't do that, but I will look forward to hearing about it because it does change the flavor of your class when half of them are gone. And if they didn't get to go and they wanted to go, that's the other thing. I'm glad we talked about that. So
I imagine it's going to be it's going to be a whole different group of kids next time because these juniors and the freshmen and sophomores are pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
Like both of those guys who talked about the band, I think
They're
are
ready to go.
interested. Yeah.
I think it adds value too to the course, right? It's much different when you're sitting at your own personal goals
something
from
vested.
sitting in Spanish class when you know that you're
gonna have to use
that you're going to have that immersive experience. I think they probably are a little bit more serious.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get to go to Spain or on any trip with Mrs. Baranowski, so I'm a little bit sad.
Maybe they'll need a chaperone.
But no, truly though, I don't feel like I really understood how tied a language is to its culture until I was overseas. You know what I mean? So I think it is really great.
And being able to see how people live, that's huge because you
Positive
don't get to do that when you book on Expedia.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
for
And it
sure.
was Explorica. It came to me, the other company was Explorica. That's why I got confused.
So with that, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the trip to Panama for 24? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
And can we thank you for the conversation? I think that's helpful. So with that, I think we are tabling the consent agenda because there are some changes to make. So we will pull that for today. And then moving on, that's a lot of mission moments. Did anybody have a mission moment that is burning a hole in their pocket that they have to share this week? Yes.
2.
Got to do it.
Graduation. We
Oh,
sent
okay.
23 seniors off onto their next steps, and it was wonderful. And then today we had our field day at the high school, which I was a little hesitant. I'm not gonna lie, a little hesitant. Be like, okay, there's so much stuff at the end of the year, and the students they designed it. And they're like, can we please do it? And it was so much fun. It was much needed. A little kind of break before finals start later this week. So
It
kudos
sounded
to them.
fun from my house.
Oh, good. Had a great time. That's it. I won't take any more time.
That's okay. Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
Just really quick, PTA had their final summer blast off. It's now the old Starbucks Festival. And it was very well attended. It was a great sunny day, and it was just so great to see so many kids out there enjoying all the water slide parts to the day. And a lot of very decorative faces for the face painting. It was a great event.
Anyone else?
I was just going to say about the United Way.
Yeah, I think that's really well.
You know, I had nominated Hadley Zinal, and she won the Young Community Leader of the Year award. And it was really wonderful how Hatfield was represented, because the person of the year was Sean Robinson, and for work that he has done at the Prospect Meadow Farm for ServiceNet. So the two top awards were Hatfield people, and I just think that is outstanding and says a lot about our community. A lot to be proud of.
Indeed. A 30-second mission moment. I got a nice little Attagirl accolade for, not to me personally so much as Hatfield in general, from some nearby political leaders who are like, you passed an override. So it's kind of like, yes, we did.
We
Just
did.
That was kind of a nice moment. Okay, so moving on, administrative reports. Is there anything, I'm just looking at the time, and we've all had a chance to read these. Would you guys like to highlight just anything that you want to make sure that we saw in your reports? Michael, you could kick that off. Is there anything you want to call out in particular?
Nothing that hasn't been already talked about in past in terms of updates. Just want to point out and congratulate Kevin Wall and Carrie Gaget, who will be the association's co-presidents for next year. So congratulations to them, and thank you to John Garrett and Audrey Weston for their work. I don't know how long they've been, at least 2 years. I don't know if it was before that.
Longer.
So
Longer for Audrey, for sure.
Mhm.
Okay. Dr. Driscoll, highlights?
Nothing that I didn't use in my mission moments.
So I just want to call out, in case people didn't know it, I didn't know before your report that 7th grade went with 5th grade to Mystic.
Oh, yeah.
I
And
did
I
not know
think
that either.
That was pretty brilliant. So nice. I'm assuming that went really well
It was fantastic.
from
They
all.
had a great time.
Yeah. Good,
Thanks for the invitation.
Of course, you're welcome.
good little piggybacking on that. That's awesome.
I did not know that. That's pretty cool.
Well, they felt that they missed it. I mean, that was a COVID year, and they felt like they had enough room on the bus. It kind of made sense. They're like, we have enough space. Why don't we offer this to the 7th graders who should have gone and didn't get the opportunity? So.
And like, they're not just that group right above them that's like there all the time, right? That's like,
Right.
Yeah.
Did the 7th grade get to do any other trip this year? Because they weren't part of the Washington DC. That's 8th grade and up.
8th grade and up. No, so that was kind of.
That was really it for them. Because what about Nature's Classroom? Was there anything for that? No.
No.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad they went. That's great.
okay. Principal Petra, you have highlights?
Yeah, we're really excited. Mr. April is going to be taking all of our STEAM classes this Thursday to move the big mound of compost that got delivered so that we can start actually planting. We were hoping to have done this a little bit earlier so that we could have actually had some things grow before students left. We are still confident that we're excited to grow this over the summer and then begin having kids understand more about farm to table and getting a little bit of experience and maybe tasting some things that they might not normally like to eat. And we're going to look at tracking that and collecting data and making graphs of all the things that kids have liked and not liked that might drive what we plant the following spring.
Is it all grades that are going to be moving dirt or just the older grades?
K to 6. He's doing it on this Thursday, all STEAM classes. So yes, I will make sure I make the announcement to
I can
wear
just-
clothes that can get dirty.
Yeah, I
because-
can picture mine just rolling in the dirt.
Right.
So,
It's all good.
okay.
Based on experience, any clothes can get dirty.
Yeah.
Right?
So true.
Yeah.
Who sends their kid to, like, everything just needs to be ready.
Yeah.
So I noticed, I just a little pull out about DESE and Math MCAS. Can you speak more about the biggest winner math challenge?
Yeah, when they do apparently look at our scores. So it was really interesting how they said they had been tracking some of the students' math scores and had actually highlighted 3 students from our school who they were inviting, and amongst a group of 8,000, there's 2,500 seats, to be doing like a 6-week summer, 3 days a week, 2 hours at a time virtually. I called the girls down and talked to them about it. There were 3 girls that won or are being invited, and also called home and told their parents, and already are excited. And one of them was like, "I have to do this today." So, so yeah, that was pretty exciting. I can't wait to highlight that at our all school meeting on Wednesday.
Nice. Okay. Dr. Bremner?
I will just highlight that because you mentioned the override, we have posted for the school psychologist position in a couple different directions, like we had discussed at our last meeting. I'm happy to report that we have a few candidates. We are going to be doing some interviews in the next week and a half or so. And a public thank you to Melissa for offering to be on the hiring committee, Emily Anderson, Nicole LaFleur, Renee Petrie, and Joey O'Connor.
Nice group. I also just wanted to share a kudos and a thank you. I noticed that you guys are working with the Hatfield Rec group to make sure that students that have extended school year services, that you're connecting just to really bridge that. And I think that's fantastic. That to me is one of the things that makes Hatfield special, because I don't think that happens everywhere.
Yeah, we've sorted out that rec staff will bring them in, our staff will bring them out, who they are, and a few needs as needed, and those kind of things. So
that's awesome.
Again, that's great, so that they don't have to choose this or that, and they get to do both.
And that the rec team has a better understanding of their campers. I
Yeah.
think that's huge. Any other questions from the committee to administration as a whole?
Not a question, but just Dr. Driscoll, you had shared a video from the journalism class, and it's just a thank you to the town for passing an override, because students were interviewing other students and then faculty about their favorite, their most memorable events, their favorite things from the school year. A lot of people said calculus and math, which I know nothing about, but just a lot of awards and a lot of sports, which was something that was on the chopping block without the override. So that just really stood out to me. And thank you for sharing the video.
And there was a second video too that was actually posted earlier, I believe, too, about they interviewed the seniors about how Smith Academy has prepared them for their next steps. And to a person, if you watch it, they talk about the small class size and how they get what they need and how they're supported to do their best. So yeah, they did a great job.
Anything else before we move on? Okay. So speaking of finance, Mr. Sullivan.
Is that my cue?
That's your cue. Would you
Okay.
like to talk about school finance?
I will try. So Christy and I met with Mr. Wood and Dr. Driscoll on the 7th to get an update on where we stand. We're going to make it through the end of the year, which is exciting, and we're going to make it through with a little more money left in our coffers than we thought we would have had at the last meeting. So that was good to hear. We will have some transfers, not tonight, but at our next meeting to finish up any fiscal year payments, covering some HVAC bills and things like that. So we're not doing it this meeting just so we don't have to do it twice if there's anything that was missed. So we'll just do it all at the next meeting. Dr. Driscoll talked about his recruitment efforts, reaching out to Monte Della Rosa, Bement, Smith Campus School to try to encourage people to join us via school choice. And he said that we've had 34 students who've committed so far.
That's district-wide.
Yeah, district-wide, yep. And hopefully growing by the week.
So we've gone from applications to commitments. Is that the story there?
Not quite yet on the commitment. Tomorrow's the last day before
Okay.
They, if we have
Tomorrow's
to do a
our,
lottery.
if we had to do a lottery.
So they'll get their letters on Wednesday. And
Is there any class that looks like we're going to have to go to a lottery?
No.
Okay. Which means nothing new came in kindergarten was the only one that was kind of close.
One thing we spent a lot of time discussing was grants. A few different things about them. We are still working on a security grant to build on our security work and camera work at both schools. We were excited to learn that the Safe and Supportive Schools grant has one more year on it, so another $10,000 for that, which covers stipends for the advisory programs at Smith Academy. And just kind of generically talked about opportunities for some parents who have reached out and said they would be willing and interested to help us seek out and learn how to apply for grants. So if there's anyone out there watching or listening and that's something that they want to do, reach out. Mr. Wood has offered to assist them in that process, and we welcome anybody's help. Thing that was discussed, universal free school lunch, fully covered this year at statewide. Next year, it's so far in the House's budget. It's not yet in the Senate's budget, so it's going to committee. And all schools are hopeful, and it's kind of expected that it's going to come out in the final budget. But even if it does, it doesn't actually cover 100% of our costs. So we did have a budget line for that next year in case it didn't go through. Regardless if it goes through or not, we need to use some of that. Things like labor, add-on items. The state program covers meals that are sold. So anything else, any waste, any excess, any labor, we still have to pay for that. We're going to have a vote coming up later in our agenda about food service prices that need to be adjusted, just an increase year over year. So this will affect a la carte items and staff meals, basically. We spent some time discussing field maintenance. Currently, they kind of work with a hodgepodge of different people to do everything we need to do to get everything mowed and maintained and aerated and fertilized. And it costs us about $12,000 a year to put it all together. Mr. Wood looked at getting consolidated quotes to just have one service cover the whole thing, and they were much more expensive. So we will either continue to piecemeal it together or reach out to our facilities director to see if he can have them take it on from the DPW within the budget that we're already expending on it. There's one para vacancy for Smith Academy for next year, so Mr. Wood's working on that. Still looking for a van driver and trying to be creative in filling that position of maybe pulling someone out of a different position to cover the van driver, since that seems to be the one that's harder to fill, and then just backfill their position in the school system. If that works out, that's easier.
I also added additional preference to a ESP position posting. This posting wasn't a requirement, but we added a preference to a 7D person.
Okay.
So we can do that for all ESP going forward, just as another point of contact.
One more way.
Dr. Bremner already discussed trying to fill the school psychologist position. Happy to hear we have applicants, but listed there just the different ways in which the position was posted to try to cast a wide net and see who we get. Still looking forward to the Spanish position being posted at the elementary school, and Dr. Driscoll posted for part-time theater arts and coding position at the high school. And then just a quick touch on next year. Mr. Wood excitedly shared the news of a possible, this is still in the ether, a possible grant coming out of budget for next year that would cover both a new roof at the elementary school with solar. So there's the whole long, I pulled it out of the House budgets thing there. I'll just read the bolded section there, but grants shall be made available to address the cost of installation, operation, or upgrades of clean energy infrastructure that improves energy efficiency, reduces carbon emissions, or mitigates impact of climate change, including school rooftop construction or repair costs necessary for a clean energy infrastructure project to be safely installed. So if that makes it through into the full budget, cross every finger you have, and we'll get on that application process immediately, but I'm sure everybody will as well.
Mhm.
So
Highly competitive.
yeah, regardless, the state is looking to boost as well the money into the school. Yeah. So that's going to be, it's proposed to go up to $1.1 billion for next year, which is a hefty increase. That's my report.
Questions on budget report or budget stuff in general? Thank you. Good recap. Okay, so moving on to a policy subcommittee report, Ms. Bench.
Okay, I have a general update and then 2 specific policies that we would like to discuss. So first, for just an update on what we have on our meetings and the work that we've been doing. After extensive research, stakeholder conversations, review of policies in other Massachusetts school districts, we reviewed as many as we could, and multiple consultations with legal counsel, the policy subcommittee again discussed the matter of a potential flag and banner policy. After this process, the subcommittee does not recommend writing a policy on this topic. And that's where we leave it. So we would like to go forward and discuss IKE, promotion and retention of students, unless there are any other questions from the committee at this time.
I just want to recognize that I know there was a lot of work done. In fact, I think that
Yes.
that paragraph
So many
undersold
hours
the number of hours in a big way.
Hours and hours.
So I know you read everything in Massachusetts, but I think you guys also went and looked at other states.
Yes, we did.
Like
We
it
did.
was a
Yes.
nationwide search of policy and practices. And I appreciate the diligence
Thank you.
greatly. So yeah, what did we decide? Policy had met 14 times this year?
I think
something like
every
that?
kind of, I think it was 12 in total.
Okay,
And
so
And we were doing our individual research
Yeah.
before the
and
meeting,
coming
so,
back to it. Yeah.
so there was lots of extra hours
it-
involved.
it was, I just appreciate that this wasn't taken lightly and it was very well researched. Thank you. So IKE,
IKE, promotion and retention of students. This is a policy just on our review schedule. We try to redo all policies at least every 10 years. And honestly, we changed one word. We compared it with the MASC policy as a reference, and they are the same.
We've been trying to update policies to say parents/guardians.
yeah, as it
And
should.
so we are adding guardians into that policy.
So this boils
the
down
word.
to students either moving up or moving down
Mhm.
is at the discretion of the building principal ultimately. There's a process and a procedure for conversation, but at the end of the day, it rests with the principal. Okay. Is there any, well, I would entertain a motion to put this on the table for a vote. Per policy's recommendation, we can choose not to vote on it, but if someone has a motion, I think is the word I'm looking for.
I would make the motion to approve the update to IKE, promotion and retention of students,
I'll second.
and waiving the readings.
Okay, so we have it on the floor for a vote. We're going to waive the readings, given it is minimal change, but that is subject to change based on conversation. Is there anyone who doesn't see moving forward with this tonight, would like more time to consider it? Okay, I no need either. Any conversation about the change or the policy as a whole?
I would just like to just kind of echo what Kathy said, that, you know, when we do these reviews simply based on time, we really are looking at any kind of wording that we can update, you know what I mean? So changing parents to parents/guardians is one of those things that we've been editing, and just making sure that we're in line with current best practice, which this policy is.
Okay. With that, we have a motion, we have a second, no further conversation. All in favor of approving the one-word update to IKE? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it's a 5-0. Moving on.
So policy IJNDD, which is a policy on social media, we are recommending this as a first reading, and do anticipate some discussion. When we were looking at this, again, just based on when it was originally written, we found that we had actually kind of 2 policies, IJNDD, which was very short, and then an extremely long IJNDDR, which was social networking websites, rules and administrative procedures for employees. So these two kind of go together. What we are recommending is substantially updating the base policy and then ultimately discontinuing the -R procedure rules and administrative procedures policy. So that's one reason why this is a first reading. We updated some wording in the first paragraph to improve language, mostly around using the word employees rather than things like staff. Some of it just said teachers, but this applies to everyone, so that. And then we made some substantial additions to the body of the policy to include guidelines on acceptable social media use for employees. They were edited from a template policy from MASC. So with that, when you view it, you should see our changes in green. And then the full IJ and DDR policy is at the bottom of the document.
Which if you read through it, you'll see that it's very outdated.
It's so outdated. References to Facebook are not included to limit the application to that program. All other, it's just, it was written in 2014. So it is time. I think I'd like to hear from the committee.
Great.
Since we're not recommending a vote, just gather some feedback.
Yeah.
Should the title of the updated one be policy on social media for staff or something? Like we've taken out for employees.
That's true.
Just to be clear that
Or
it doesn't apply to students.
Employee policy on social media.
This is the title that MASC has.
But to be fair, the body of the policy really is
It
relevant
does.
to employees. So
And
I don't have a skin in the
we were going to cross-reference it to the acceptable use policy, which is
Yep.
the one that does relate to students, so that if someone was looking up one, it would reference the other.
That makes sense.
But that's just the title that MASC had, so we thought we'd just go with that and not limit it to employees in the title. It's clear what it
Although
says.
the body does, so I'm open to either. I guess. Yeah, I don't feel strongly.
The all electronic contacts with students should be made through the district's computers and telephone system. What about contacts to students' families? Like, is there any reflection on how teachers interact with parents, guardians? Can it be personal cell phone to personal cell phone, or?
Well, we do also in item E say that employees will not give out their private cell phone number, home phone number, or private email without prior approval of the district. Generally speaking, and items C and D kind of do talk about like when you have student organization pages or groups, and how that includes administration. I think ideally our feeling was that keeping things through the school system is the most professional way to go.
So this addressed like coaches who want to say, hey, practice is going to be canceled today last minute. And they sent out a text or an email on that, as long as a district administrator is within the group, then it's allowed. But just personal contact between a coach and a player or a teacher and a student, it needs to loop in an administrator.
That was my question. The way it reads, because it says social media or other electronic means, and we're including it in IEPs left, right, and sideways for executive functioning for students to reach out directly to teachers via email, because
But
that's
it's school email.
school email. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the way it reads, D, the way it reads is that in order for a message to go back and forth between a faculty member and a student, an administrator would have to be copied. So I just don't know if we're missing wording that
I
isn't
see what you're
clear.
saying. That item D was mostly about coaches, although it does also say faculty advisors. I mean, I think when we were, Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, I think when we were writing that, we were really thinking more about like the texting
Yeah.
scenario. Whereas like,
But we didn't actually come up with this language. This is copy
Yeah.
pasted from MASC.
Yeah.
So it's not like we
that part
wrote
of it is,
this.
Like as a,
Could
when I,
clarify that
Yes,
now
yes.
that it's come up.
that's,
So that's a good
Yes.
point.
right.
yeah, when I previewed this afternoon with Melissa, I was like, we're gonna get put on every email ever.
No, and that's not the intention. I think our intention in that was when it is outside of, I mean, we just want people to use the school email. You know what I mean? So we can definitely clarify that wording because it's not meant to be like onerous.
And some of this may be just giving that instruction up front. It's like the goal is to keep communications within school.
Some of the language, even though it is outdated from the -R version, has that like purpose at the top, which I kind of like that language, but I don't know, there may be very good legal reasons why not to have that much language in there. I'm not sure, but some of the information in R, even some of the numbered items make some sense in some ways.
I similarly had missing some of the detail. So I don't want to cut that idea off. Did you get to the end of that thought? Before and you had something I can see on your face it was related, so I'm going to pause.
Well, I'm just wondering, would the committee like me to reach out to the athletic director and see if she has feedback about how coaches typically communicate about practice times, that kind of thing? I don't imagine that it would be a
Yeah.
big change from this, but
That could be helpful. I think, yeah, that's fine.
That would be great. The other piece that I'm wondering is if you guys cross-referenced it back to our teaching contract, pair contract on any of that. Because my question,
We did discuss it in the meeting.
okay, my question came into some of the details that version R got into, and I'm curious about employees posting on social media about school business and or students, so it doesn't, where it sort of felt like that got covered in the old one, the new one doesn't really get into.
Does a little bit in C. It says district, school, team, class, or student organization pages, accounts, or groups.
Okay, but I'm talking about when and if an employee decides that they want on their personal social media to talk about school-related things and talk about students. So they may not be friending students, but if they're talking about school business on their account,
I see what you're
that
saying.
was something that it spoke to previously. It's like there's a right to speak publicly, but when you communicate about your workplace, you are treated as an employee. And then, and in that case, that's the part that comes back to the teacher contract, because when you're speaking as an employee, there's a standard associated with that. And so I just would like, as you guys go back to the table, to have a deep dive on what the expectations are if you are an employee posting about students.
Sure.
Because sometimes it's a student we're a small district. It doesn't take a lot of information on social media to know who that is. In which case there are privacy, like there's all, that treads into a completely different land. And right now it seems like this policy would cover that too, but doesn't,
Not as
it doesn't expressly.
We did briefly touch on it during the meeting, but you're right. We didn't write in additional language about it
There
yet.
is talk in our employee conduct policy.
And it's not particularly,
It's
it's not
but
explicit
it's-
either.
Right.
It gives direction.
It feels like these two should meet up without sunlight between them.
Yeah, and I will say that's, again, one reason why I appreciate this discussion and why this is a first reading, because not only do we have policy on social media, we have our acceptable use policy, we have an employee conduct policy. Like, as we started to look at the other policies that intersect with this, it's many.
Yes.
So
Is there a practice that starts to reference some of that stuff?
that's what we started in the cross-reference, but did not read through all, because it like
It's a lot.
snowballs.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a lot of.
In terms of, the difference from, was it 2014 to now? Because this is titled social media, and, talking about pages and accounts and those kind of things, you have that phrase or other electronic means. So like, I feel like the title of this is social media, but we're also talking about email, we're talking about text, we're talking about, so, and I'm particularly around email and just thinking about what I cited earlier, because, and there is some language in the R around like, people understanding like we keep an archive of this and it can be found for, litigation or, anything of that nature for the school email address. But I'm not sure if it's just a social media policy, that's the purpose of this policy. If it gets way too muddy, because so much of our world is email, and I wouldn't describe email as social media.
I wouldn't describe texting that way either. And this is starting to get into
Yeah.
that. So
I don't disagree.
Different
Again,
ones.
that's what MASC titled it, and we just went with that. So it could be social
Digital
media,
communication or
social
It
media
doesn't-
and digital.
Yeah, I think we need to
electronic
I think
communication.
this has been very helpful, and we do need to continue.
This was
the-
just the
like-
first pass at it.
Like I said,
That's
as
the
we
whole-
started to look at the other ones that relate to this, it's like snowball.
Yes.
So
And then one thing we were talking about was we have, staff members who have students who come here, and particularly, by junior, senior year, they may have the friends of their children, like in a small community, or cousins of, so the may not.
We
friend
did
or
talk about
follow
that in our meeting.
Current students, I don't know if we would need like, yes, you can friend your own kid. Just because of how it's written right now, it would look like they'd be.
and you parents need the opportunity to see their kids' stuff.
So I was just thinking,
The collaborative just passed a policy very similar to this that completely restricts teacher and student communications until they're 23.
wow.
Well, the collaborative is
They
for
go-
special ed, so
Yeah.
students can be in their program until that age, till they age out.
well, they can in public school as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yes,
And we discussed that.
but they
That's
put an age
specific
on it, and
about private conversations, not
Yes.
school related.
yes.
So
As I think that intro to it that said, here's the goal, like that part probably half of all of our stuff tonight that might do away with. As you're looking at it, if you can think about the stuff that goes through Google, which starts to get into a great, like how Google, like there's chats in Google Meet and some of that kind of stuff, which is used a lot in education. So I don't use it enough to be smart in asking a question, except to say, hey, can you make sure that whatever, that you look at it through that lens, just to know.
And I'm not sure, this goes back to sort of scope. Is the purpose of this just the interaction between faculty and students, or like you were talking about, like faculty to the public, faculty to faculty, like,
That's the thing. It's like social media starts to get very broad very quickly. It almost could, those might be two different policies. However, I see the opportunity and need for both of those things to get covered, but they're.
And I don't know what Kathy, do you know the history of how we ended up with an R? Like how we ended up with a short one and then an R one that was
R
longer?
ones were designated to be like procedures, but they're like administrative. So, I'm definitely taking notes on all this feedback. It's very helpful. But also, like, one of the things we've been working on is that we do not feel, I'll speak for myself. I don't feel that we need to line out like every single administrative procedure like enshrined in a district policy. Sometimes it might be necessary, but that was kind of like one of our hope in this would be to like just flesh out the actual policy and then not have like
That was the
like
way things that were
a very
being
long rules
suggested to us
document.
for many years, is to have a policy that is somewhat concise,
Mhm.
but slightly vague, little room for interpretation, but then have a procedural attachment to the policy that really goes into the details.
That's true. We do have a lot that are like that.
Yes, that was the
It's not
big
my
thing for a while.
approach, really,
So-
but
My concern is anything that also includes words like apply disciplinary action up to and including termination. Like, how vague do we want that to be? That doesn't, like, if you can get fired for it, it shouldn't be too terribly vague. Just,
But it could just cross-reference.
it can
to
cross-reference
whatever
something,
the
yeah,
current contract or something.
if it's clear there.
And it might not be.
And does this go beyond just folks who are covered under contracts too?
well,
It would
yes,
be
it
any
does.
employee.
That's
Any
part,
employee.
That's part of it, right?
So if we cross-reference the contract, it might not.
Right, not everybody would have a contract.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Let's speak to the need for an employee handbook.
Yes.
So
That's where
there's
we
another
are.
place, so that's another spot
Yeah.
could get covered. I just feel like every now and then we have a spot that it's like one thing comes this far and this one comes this far, and then there's like this just sort of
This gap of
this gap of
Yeah.
it's not a procedure anywhere, it's not in a
Yeah.
handbook somewhere, and it's not in the policy.
Right.
And it leaves us open.
Mhm.
So
Interesting.
okay.
before other,
I just had a question about, do we have some kind of system that's monitoring, and I just closed it out, I'm sorry, but it talked about the use of school computers. Do we have some kind of system that's pinging?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Suzer has helped tighten that.
Yeah.
For email. So, one of the things, through a handbook or through some other means, we can capture all the email, but if a coach uses a cell phone, their personal cell phone, to call, to text out to a group on their team, we don't have any rights to that.
Okay.
Should we, might this policy encourage us to look into a more centralized way of communicating, like a way beyond just email for teachers to communicate with students and families, that, it still is archived and it's within
So-
policy, and also for
Yeah.
coaches to do
So
the
we
same
do
way?
have that system in place.
Okay.
but it's not just widely used. So we have something called K-12 alerts that we can, do a microcosm of it with an app on someone's phone, and we would capture that.
Okay.
So
That's what you're using to send out like school closures. So, and you would be able to, like a coach would be able to pull out.
set up a team.
Might be something worth looking into and encouraging wider adoption of that.
Maybe
a
do
little
some
bit of a-
training.
Yeah, there might be a little bit of a learning curve, but once it's going,
Right.
and way easier than someone maintaining a text message thread, and people with the green bubbles get throwing everybody off.
Right.
yeah. And to be honest, I think the call out that not finding ways to do it where it's trackable, that you don't have to put an administrator on copy,
Even better.
because I could see that getting out of hand pretty fast.
Well,
I
and,
think-
and also if we're trying to empower, particularly our students getting ready to transition to own their own self-advocacy and problem-solving skills, I don't want them to think why would Connor or I need to be in the loop when they're asking about their English assignment? So it's just how it is.
I think this really stems, though, from specific cases of impropriety
Mhm.
with staff, employees, faculty,
Not
whoever.
ours, per se.
No, not
Just
ours.
clear-
Yes,
Just making
no.
sure we say that loudly.
Yes. So it's really not oversight of the student, it's oversight of the adult in the situation, that they're not overstepping.
The way, to Molly's question, the way I interpret it was that if it was through district email, which is what we want them to use, they wouldn't need to.
No problem.
Only if it was like an emergency. You know,
Right.
I think about the trip to Panama, going to the airport. There's an accident on, and they need to detour around something, and they get in touch with each other on their cell phone. Some a situation like that, then they would
Having
inform us.
Senora's telephone number for
Right.
that trip makes a world of sense.
Yep.
Totally.
Yeah. And the coaches all would have the AD's
Yeah, and
information and loop
Yep.
her in when they need to.
I actually just reached out and she got back to me, and they do frequently. The coaches frequently communicate with their captains to communicate things out to the team as well. So it gives them that that kind of leadership role too. So it would be like a group text that includes the captains. So we may want to think about if there's a way to do that through K-12 alerts or something. So it's not using personal cell phone, but using a district approved kind of thing.
With the K-12 alerts, while you may not be, like CC'd as part of the thread, do you have the ability to go into the thread on your own and review them?
I'm going to
Sure, it's
say yes, but I don't know enough about that part of it to confirm it.
Okay.
But that all of those are stored.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine that we can't.
But it's functionally like Slack for schools, kind of.
I don't know what Slack is.
Yes.
Okay, you're saying yes.
So the intent for having the paper trail or whatever could become part of. Okay. Have we given you more feedback than you need?
Yes.
It's helpful.
No.
This
You've
is why
given
we
us
have,
good
this is why we
feedback.
have readings.
Yeah, this is the
you know,
whole,
it's
this is the
good.
way it's supposed to go.
And this,
Okay.
as soon as we opened it, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this is gonna open
Yeah.
up so many, like,
Yeah, but it's
hey, but
good
it's been
because it
since
shouldn't just rest between two
2014.
of us.
Yeah, no, it needs to be done. Like,
A
has
lot of-
anything changed in the last 9 years? I don't know.
A lot of heads are good on that. Okay.
So much.
So we're moving on to the next item, which is around food services and meal prices. Mr. Wood prepared some notes for us.
Yes, actually, Mr. Halpin put together this chart. So essentially, we need to prepare for if they don't pass the hot lunch program, paid for by the state. And so we need meal rates. So there's no urgency to this. Obviously, but we wanted to make sure that it was put on our website so the parents could prepare and so forth. So he's recommending a price charge of $3.75 for a paid lunch, and the reduced rates are there as well. And then for breakfast, a paid full lunch, a full breakfast would be $2.
Before the pandemic, when they still paid.
Last time.
What was the last prices students actually paid?
I believe the last one we had a record in my office was $3.25. But I don't know exactly what year that was. At least I don't have it in my memory. I don't know.
And that price was the same whether it was Smith Academy or
Yes.
HES?
Yes, these are lunches for the district.
And if a student brings their own lunch and wants a milk, is there a cost for that? Or is that covered by state?
No, that there is a cost for that. So I've got to circle back with him and get that number for you.
Right, because this is just for full
This is
lunches,
just
right?
for
It's
full
not for any of
lunches.
the a la carte.
Because just to be clear, like if a student requests a full lunch, it's covered if they bring their own lunch, but just want the milk that would have been part of the school lunch, it's not covered.
Correct.
It's just it's a weird glitch.
Yes, it is. But not one we can control as a district.
No, I
Yeah.
know. It's just a weird glitch to call it. And so that there's no confusion from parents and say like, hey, my kid wanted to
Right.
get a milk and they said it's going to be 75 cents and you shrugged your shoulders and walked away.
Now, didn't I hear that a la carte prices were going to go up? Or
That was in one of the updates.
He hasn't given me those prices yet.
okay,
This is just for the full meals.
So what is the time sensitivity on voting this through?
So it's really about communication to parents, right? So, and of course, given that we may find out between now and August that it's free, it opens our window greatly.
So everything else where we've had a price hike, we've taken in the information, we've taken a pause before we voted on it.
Mhm.
We've given a chance to tell people, hey, by the way, this price is looking like it might go up, so that if there is a lot of feedback, I'm not sure there would be, but if there was time to take in the feedback. So given that, I would actually look to put this back on an agenda in a month or even maybe 2, so long as we got it ahead of the school year, because we might find out that it's free.
Right.
And we give time for public comment if somebody wants to talk about raising lunches by 50 cents.
In Adam's report, though, he said how even if it is free, we have to do something about prices because it doesn't cover our other costs.
Right.
So if for the next time this comes on our agenda, we have more information about what that would look like or what that would mean. And I think you're talking about a la carte prices.
Right, we can get a plan together for the other conference.
Is that
And it
what
would
you were
be
referencing?
staff
And
prices.
Also, and employees buying meals, like their
Employee
prices are going
meals.
to go up. So regardless, whether it passes or not, this is kind of the proposed.
But the employee costs and the a la carte costs just aren't covered.
Right.
here.
Okay.
And what is an employee cost? Because this is a student charge,
Yeah.
$375.
What do staff pay today for lunch?
$5.
$5. Still the cheapest lunch you can probably find around.
And it comes with a milk.
Okay, so next time we'll look at this, we'll see a la carte costs, staff costs. If those are going up, we'll know that too.
Right.
And hopefully the Senate will have done some good deeds.
And just because I think that there was confusion last time, regardless, every year we're sending out the free and reduced lunch forms
Mhm.
that families should
Need to fill out.
fill out,
Right,
regardless of whether it's going to be covered or not.
absolutely.
Those are really important to fill out because we use that data as, to apply for grant, like, free and reduced lunch rates, they go into grant applications, they go into reporting for the state, that kind of thing. So it's very important that people do fill those out.
Yeah, it's very vital information for us to have.
So is there going to be a way to do that fully electronically this year?
We're working on it, yes.
Good answer, good answer.
Ready sign.
The only
Yes.
answer. Okay, so we will come back in a future, in a month.
I would recommend bringing it in a month because then if there's more discussion or
Yeah.
stuff, then we can still vote on it before school starts in August.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Just out of curiosity, who is breakfast? Breakfast is available at the high school?
Academy.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
We'd love to kind of figure out how to get it at HES. It's just about scheduling really and staffing. So part of the majority of costs of the food service program right now really is staffing. And so the issue becomes how to stretch the few staff that we have across the entire day to be able to do a breakfast and a lunch. And it's really hard to do.
Because they've got to come in X hours earlier.
If there's students at the elementary school that would need breakfast, that would,
I mean, would
There's
that
zero-
eliminate
there's
snack
zero.
time?
Not really.
No.
like a bagged option or that comes
Zoom
down
it
from
over
the high
from
school
Smith.
or no?
I can ask the nurse. I mean, at this point, I'm not hearing reports from teachers and or the nurse that there's a high amount of students that go
Okay.
down complaining about not feeling well or stomach aches, because historically that's basically been a clue to us that there's a kid who's hungry. And in all truthfulness, I'm sure most teachers have snacks in their classroom if students really were truly that hungry. But I mean, I can see if there is that data that warrants it, but no one's really complaining or saying that kids appear hungry and or
Okay, good.
are in need of breakfast.
And every grade in the elementary has a built-in snack time
Every single one.
in their morning.
Yes.
And I think we average maybe 5 a day, of course, the year in SA. So it's not a big need there. So
The convenience.
it's convenience.
If I can just ask a semi-related question, will we also anticipate votes over the summer about, cost updates for before and after care, for athletic fees, things like that, or is that just set without us?
The before and after school, we're not raising rates.
Okay.
At all. The fees for athletics would be something you would need to vote on.
Okay. Do we anticipate any changes?
I don't right now. We've set the budget. I mean, I think that's an added burden that we don't want to entertain. Our goal really is to get membership of the teams to make sure that we have the right amount of money.
And with before and after care, I don't remember from our last meeting in finance, are we doing good budget-wise in that? We're covering, if not a little bit more.
We're doing very well.
Okay.
Yeah, we're looking at ways to do the Friday early release days as well.
That'll be a
So,
huge bonus.
so
I know Ms. Landeville had reached out to the PTA about requesting some money for supplies and stuff. Is there sufficient amount left in the account to maybe help her with that?
Yes, absolutely.
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And I had shared that with the PTA this was a 1 year only because it was a startup and it was brand new. But
Okay.
yes.
And families stepped up.
Yeah,
as well, too.
absolutely.
It was really good.
Yep.
Okay, so moving on to surplus and recycling of Chromebooks, phones, and other. So per our policy earlier this year, we now have a mechanism so things that are completely broken, completely unsalvageable in any way, shape, or form may be disposed of.
Right. So these are Chromebooks essentially that we cannot do updates on them, have some other mechanical issue with them. There are some that you could maybe type on, but we can't use them because they don't have the right configuration for security. So they don't align with.
7 or 8 years old? It was like
yeah, they're 7+. Yeah.
They're as old as the policy we just read.
Older.
Older.
I don't know what Caliphones players are.
I'm Googling that right now.
I
It's apparently like one of those things,
So
like a
someone tell
cassette.
us what's a Caliphone player, just for
Adam
trivia.
Googled it. Oh, yeah, okay.
Either I'm
It's a
too old or-
personal cassette.
So we used to listen to our books on tape on there.
Oh,
And it had like
it had
a
a
thing
special
for
name.
like 10, you could plug in
Oh,
10
yeah.
headphones.
Is that
I want
3
it.
boxes of miscellaneous cables, etc. It's like really relatable.
Okay.
Mm.
I think we all have one of those in our house.
See those 3 boxes and raise your.
Don't tell my husband they're available to take. So is there a motion to let these treasures go?
I'll make a motion to recycle to dispose of the obsolete and broken technology as described in the update.
Great.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Bye-bye VCR players.
I don't know if we should reach
So
out
sorry.
to the Hatfield Museum for the Caliphone.
The Mimeo appliance.
The Mimeo
The
stuff.
Mimeo.
Yeah. Ooh, I'll take us back.
Brings me back to biology.
Oh, God.
So, as per policy BDE, the committee chairperson, subject to approval by the committee, will appoint the subcommittees and its members. And so tonight, I just wanted to make some committee assignment recommendations for approval. And my plan is to stay the course. And so school finance would be Adam Sullivan and myself, negotiations, Kathy Engelhardt and myself, policy, Kathy Engelhardt and Becca Bench, an ad hoc long-term planning team, Becca Bench and myself, with appointments to the collaborative for educational services with Kathy Engelhardt, wellness, Becca Bench, sick leave bank, Kathy Engelhardt, Hatfield 2040, I don't know what to call that this time, but that's
Fine.
what I'm calling it,
That's
Becca
great.
Bench. And capital planning is my holdout, and we're going to review that in November and make a decision. So there may be other things that change over the course of the year as needs may arise, but I feel like why rock the boat? So I do believe that this, per our newest policy, actually requires a vote. Is there a motion or to approve this?
I'll make a motion to approve or accept the subcommittee assignments for FY24.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any conversation?
I'll just say that it's a good thing I'm still on the collaborative because now I'm the chair.
Which is one of the things I think we want to watch. If that becomes an overwhelming amount of work and you want to
I'm only doing it until September.
okay, so we can keep a close eye. And Jen and I have talked about ways that she is supporting things that aren't necessarily showing up as committee appointments. So it's not like she's not getting off easy. So any concerns, questions? Okay. All in favor of the appointments?
Aye.
Aye. Any changes? Nay. And there's a link to that's written up. Mr. Wood, you don't have to all that, just so you have it. Next up, I added to the agenda a joint resolution for the rural schools bill. So this is an update and a heads up, and I want a short conversation. I don't think we need to go in depth. There's a lot of information on the agenda if you would like to read more. Hatfield is one of 65 towns that qualify for rural school support. And there is currently a bill, it's concurrent, there's one in the House and one in the Senate at the moment, that would significantly increase support for rural districts. I've shared some highlights about the things that it's addressing. In particular, I think for us, it would probably help with special education costs. It would cover, for example, all the transportation for special ed students that need to go out of district. For regional schools, it covers additional things that are helpful, but there's something in it for everyone. In fiscal year 23, there was $5.5 million in rural aid, and Hatfield saw $20,655. The projections for funding, if this new rural schools bill goes in, right now it's being bandied about as $60 million. I think I don't think there's anyone who thinks it will go through to committees in a joint resolution. Like, it probably won't stay $60 million. But if the scope of that stayed and our percentage of the pie stayed the same, that would be a difference for Hatfield of around $200,000. There's currently a group, there's a little map on the notes that show you where those rural districts are. And you can see there are a lot of our neighbors. It's not just us. And there is a group that is primarily Western Mass driven that's looking for support to help this bill get through the legislature, to make sure that there are hearings, and then to support its ultimate passage, just because it's hard to keep up for rural schools. And so they look at things like districts with 1,300 or fewer students cost 16.7% more per pupil to operate than the state average. Small K through 12 districts cost 22.7% more per pupil to operate than larger ones. And I think they're just making sure that kids in small districts have equal opportunity as every other kid in Massachusetts. And right now, the funding equations don't keep up. Chapter 70 in particular does not keep up. So I did a little bit of homework to share why we qualify for this. To be rural, you have to have fewer than 35 students per square mile, and your per capita income has to be under the state average. And the rate is 35. We are just a hair under 21 students in our district. And per the cherry sheet, our per capita income is $39,779, and the state average is $53,161. And we are close to actually qualifying for additional funds that they would distribute through a declining enrollment fund. They're looking for districts who have 35% drop in over 20 years, and we're at 32%. So the things that help should help rural districts, should help us as well. And so my interest is to see if you guys feel like we might want to put forward a joint resolution with the select board and the finance committee, because those are the other two groups that people are reaching out to across the state, because obviously they're fiscally minded teams as well. And would we want to support this bill? And if so, do that in conjunction with the select board and the finance committee. So I know it's a lot to digest. And the promotion of the bill is just underway. So there are select board members, school committee members, and finance committee members who have gotten together to help put together information to help this pass. So just gauging your interest in adding our support to the bill. I'm all for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would be great if the needs of rural school districts were supported.
So if you guys support the interest, then I will, there is a draft available that I will customize to fit our district. We've already done the homework. And I will reach out to both FinCom and Select Board because it feels like it would mean a lot more if it came from all three committees and not just a school committee.
Has there been any communication with the other committees about this at all yet? Or
No, I wanted to make sure you guys were there. I didn't want to run off.
Would there be, and I know you cited the SOA in here, but would it make sense to include in the resolution about what funds we did get under SOA versus what? Like, I know it was just very discrepant how it ended up being distributed. So I'm just curious if just a plug on like, that was supposed to help rural schools. This one maybe will, and some kind of comparison. I'm food for that.
Will do. So I think the next passage would be come back with the draft and having given the other two committees a heads up, but I would like you guys to see it and then we can move it beyond us. But I don't want to
still the
spend the
Rural
time on it.
Schools Coalition that the superintendents were doing. Is that still
Yes.
ongoing? And are they looking into any kind of support for this?
Oh, yes, they're very
Okay.
active.
But have they come up with any?
Well, I think part of the energy and support is, has pushed this type of work forward. Our full legislative committee is support from MASS is supportive of rural school aid of the commission, which was 60 million, and so that's the direction that we're going.
There was a local rural aid group. Was it Mohawk? Was it?
Yep.
Yeah. They were really spearheading the Western Mass area.
So last year,
Some of this comes up
Okay.
out of that.
last year we had the large group meeting of the coalition commission, excuse me, and pushed.
Good. So we'll keep moving forward on that. Thank you for entertaining that. And then we have just two things left. Before we start talking about the superintendent evaluation, can we look at 16 and talk about summer meetings? So I see everybody's got their calendars out. So I would be interested in having another workshop in the summer. It could be July or August, but that would be, we haven't set what the agenda would be for that, but might be
In addition to a regular business meeting that month.
depending on the need. Yes, but I'd rather have it in lieu. We might have a short business meeting to sign paperwork separate, but it may be, we might tag it on to the end of one. Thoughts? How are
Start
your
with vacation weeks?
how
Who's
are your-
going where?
Yeah, how are your July schedules?
July is a mess.
Traveling a lot this summer.
The week of July 16th, we are out. Otherwise, July is open for the Sullivan family.
What about the week of the 10th?
So the week of the 10th and the week of the 17th, I work till 3:30. And then that first week in July, we're on vacation.
We had, let's start with administration had, remind me what those two did, that there were 2
It
weeks.
was July,
I thought it was in my note, right? Oh, here it is. So the 24th through the 29th or the 11th through the 14th
Or out?
are
No,
in.
those are in.
So let's look at, is there anybody out the 24th through the 29th? Out, okay. Is there anybody out July 11 through 14?
Okay.
So the window, July 11th.
So the 11th through the one doesn't work.
That doesn't actually work.
No, it's just really that July 24th week. We discussed, we're doing an administrative retreat.
Right.
We haven't finalized anything, but we can
Right,
do.
but
one of those
you're out the
days.
whole week.
Oh, you're out that.
Okay, so why don't you guys take a look and send me weeks in August that would be good. So if you can all email me, I'm going to collect for August, and you guys can each give me a note and say, here's when I could meet in August if we wanted to do a workshop. Otherwise, I will email out and we will find a night to do a business meeting in July because we need to make some transfers.
Are we looking to do a daytime meeting? I guess that was.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So
Like last
a workshop session. Oh, but he didn't have the, you were there, weren't you? Our first workshop?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember there being daylight, but yeah, it was a year.
Well,
ago.
that's because we were in the bunker.
We were in the
of
library.
Ah.
It
I
was
mean,
dark.
Christy knows she has to pay
Oh,
me.
that's right.
Yeah, we had the
Fancy coffee.
breakfast.
Yeah,
had-
we had the bagel witches
Not
from Tandem.
Bougie.
Those were good.
Bougie. Gotta get a bougie coffee. We'll get through it.
So, okay.
Gosh.
Thank you for sending me dates in August. Superintendent evaluation is our last item up on the night. So I have been in communication with the committee about our superintendent's evaluation, which is one of our core responsibilities. Our superintendent has provided his self-evaluation, which you have now seen. There are 2 things I want to make sure we get settled before we leave tonight. One is just an agreement around the individual standards that we're going to use for that. And so per the instructions, there are 4 standards by which all superintendents are measured. Standard 1 is, and within them, there are specific sort of focus areas. And the recommendation is to take 6 to 8 focus areas and to use those specific focus areas as the way to look at that standard. And that the focus areas would be selected based on goals that were already agreed to, so that they sort of dovetail together. So looking at the goals that we agreed to in October, along with the district improvement plan, I had made some recommendations so that we could move along on this, so that we were using the same set of criteria. So standard 1 recommendations were curriculum and data-informed decision-making. Standard 2, which is around management and operations, recommendations were laws, ethics, and policies, along with fiscal systems. Standard 3, family and community engagement, the recommendation was engagement and communication. And standard 4, professional culture, was on commitment to high standards and continuous learning. So far materials have been prepped and shared with those standards embedded. They're easily changed if this is not where the committee would like to go. But I offer that up. Any conversation, any preference to do something different? See, you are eager to talk about the standards.
I appreciate the work that you put into that.
Okay. So with that, the other thing I want to make sure I leave room for questions the committee may have to the superintendent they want anything clarified on the self-evaluation, and also to make sure that we're clear about setting some deadlines to get your information back to me so that I can roll it up into one evaluation. And we will give this in the July meeting.
I think it'll help then to know when our July meeting is.
For sure, but I'm just going to tell you right now, let's get done by the end of the month. So that won't matter. So it's June 12th. Does anyone think they would have a difficult time completing their personal part of the evaluation by the 23rd, which would be a week from Friday?
Oh, I was thinking end of the month is the 30th.
Well, that means I have a week to
I know.
get it all together. What does it say? One of you has already done their job. Just won't name names. Anybody have a problem with the 23rd? Going once, going twice. Okay. And then I will have the collective piece done by the 30th.
And we can go into that Google form that you created, and you can, it's not a one and done. You can go in
Correct.
and you can edit what's in there.
I set it up so that it can be edited. So I will not look to pull anything off of that before the 23rd.
And then I just had a question with the supportive documents. Are those complete?
They're complete.
I'm looking at the same thing.
The data dashboard, the ready tool, the communications plan.
No, we're in the wrong.
So you can find, there's two places you can find it.
It's at the
It's
end.
at the end of the self-eval,
Just
there are
was-
links. And the
Page
other
8.
place is on a shared folder that's shared with the committee. So there's in the email that goes through the evaluation process, there's a link to, and there's a folder there.
Perfect. Sorry. I was
No,
like,
no worries.
why did I lose them?
I just remember this being a really confusing process last year. And so I was like, how could we maybe make it easier?
So I think I was confused. So like when you go to the data dashboard, we shouldn't be looking at the data there. Like we're just
Right, that's
looking
just the
at,
template.
okay.
Any other conversation the committee would like to have about the evaluation process or materials provided? And you can email me one-off questions. I don't mind that. I'm just remember that in addition to the Google form, which is going to help us collect everything, and it tells you where to fill in. So once you submit that Google form, you're going to get an email with your responses, and that becomes your reference point when you do the DESI form that is less clear. I'm most generous. That form is just,
Isn't that a piece of work?
you think it could be a little better. But
I
anyway,
remember when they rolled that out and they did a couple tweaks to it and it still didn't improve it.
technology is available. It could be easy, but no. Okay. Any other business before we adjourn? Okay. With that, we are adjourned. 9:15. That's one of our later nights.